The blind monk who saw through my soul. Some stories don't entertain. They reveal. They awaken something ancient in us. I want you to imagine walking into a room where someone has never seen your face, never heard your voice, never known your name, yet somehow knows the deepest secret you've been carrying. The weight you thought no one else could see, the guilt that follows you like a shadow. This happened to me 15 years ago in a monastery tucked away in the mountains of northern Thailand. I was there, running away from something I had done, something I couldn't forgive myself for. I thought I could hide behind the excuse of spiritual seeking, but the monk I met there, he was completely blind, yet he saw right through me in a way that changed everything I thought I knew about sight, about truth, about the invisible threads that connect all our actions across time. Let me tell you what really happened. I arrived at Wat Phra That Doi Suthep on a Tuesday morning in 2009, carrying nothing but a backpack and a heart so heavy I could barely breathe. 3 months earlier, I had been driving home from work when I received a text message. Instead of waiting, I glanced down for just 2 seconds. 2 seconds that changed everything. My car drifted into the oncoming lane, and I collided with a young father picking up his daughter from soccer practice. He survived, but barely. She didn't. The legal system called it an accident. My insurance covered the damages. But I knew better. I knew that somewhere in that moment of choosing convenience over caution, I had created something that couldn't be undone. The Buddha spoke of this in the Dhammapada. All things arise from mind. When the mind is stained, suffering follows like the cart follows the ox. I had tried therapy, tried drinking, tried throwing myself into work. Nothing touched the darkness that had settled in my chest. So I bought a plane ticket to Thailand, thinking maybe if I meditated enough, prayed enough, prostrated enough, I could somehow balance the scales. The monastery was ancient, its golden stupas catching the morning light like captured prayers. I approached the main hall nervously, expecting to go through some kind of formal process to request lodging. Instead, I found myself face to face with an elderly monk, sitting in perfect stillness on a worn wooden bench. His eyes were completely white, clouded with cataracts that must have stolen his sight decades ago. But when he turned toward me, not quite toward my face, but somehow toward my soul, I felt more seen than I had ever felt in my life. "You've been carrying her with you," he said in English that was slow but clear. My knees nearly buckled. I hadn't told anyone why I was there. I hadn't even introduced myself. "I don't understand," I whispered. "The little girl," he continued, his voice like wind through bamboo. "She follows you because you won't let her go. But she's not angry. She's trying to teach you something you're not ready to learn." I started crying right there in the courtyard. Deep, body-shaking sobs that I had been holding back for months. This monk, this man who couldn't see the color of my shirt or the tears on my face, somehow knew about the dreams that haunted me. Dreams where a 7-year-old girl with braided hair would appear at the foot of my bed, not accusing, not angry, just present. "How do you?" I began, but he raised a gentle hand. "Sit," he said, patting the bench beside him. "Let me tell you about the eyes that matter." For the next hour, he spoke about karma, not as punishment, but as the great teacher. Western minds often misunderstand, he said. They think karma is about judgment. But karma is about connection. Every action creates a thread. Some threads are beautiful, some are tangled, but all are part of the same tapestry. He told me that he had been born blind in this lifetime, but in meditation, he often saw glimpses of why. In a previous life, he had been a guard in a prison who deliberately ignored the suffering of inmates. I chose not to see their pain then, he said. So I learned to see differently now. The physical eyes are often a distraction from the heart's vision. Then he said something that stopped my world. The girl chose this intersection with you, not as victim, but as teacher. Her soul knew yours needed to learn about the weight of choices, about forgiveness, about the difference between guilt that paralyzes and remorse that awakens. As if on cue, the temple bells began to ring for evening meditation. The monk stood slowly, and as he did, he placed his hand briefly on my shoulder. Tonight, in your dreams, instead of carrying her pain, try asking her what she wants to give you. The answers might surprise you. That night, I had the most vivid dream of my life. The little girl appeared as usual, but this time, instead of standing silently, she walked over and placed a small origami crane in my palm. When I looked up to thank her, she smiled, the first time I had ever seen her smile, and said, "You can't save me because I was never lost, but you can save yourself by learning to forgive forward." I woke up with tears on my cheeks and an origami crane clutched in my hand, made from a piece of monastery prayer paper I had never seen before. The blind monk taught me something profound that morning and in the weeks that followed. He showed me that true sight isn't about seeing what's in front of us. It's about seeing through the illusions that keep us trapped. In Buddhism, we speak of the 6 realms of existence, and one of them is the hungry ghost realm, beings with enormous appetites that can never be satisfied. I realized I had been living in that realm, hungry for forgiveness, but trying to feed that hunger with guilt and self-punishment. The monk helped me understand that guilt looks backward, but compassion looks forward. The Buddha taught, "Hatred never ends through hatred. By love alone does it end." This is an ancient law. But I learned that this includes the hatred we direct toward ourselves. Self-forgiveness isn't about excusing what we've done. It's about accepting the responsibility to do better, to let our mistakes become the soil from which wisdom grows. The monk explained that in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a practice called Tonglen, taking and giving. We breathe in suffering and breathe out relief. We learn to transform pain into compassion. Your accident, he said, was devastating. But devastation can become dedication. The question is, what will you dedicate your life to now? I spent 3 more weeks at that monastery, learning to meditate not to escape my feelings, but to sit with them completely. To let guilt transform into genuine remorse, remorse into commitment, and commitment into service. When I left, the blind monk gave me a final teaching. Some people spend their whole lives with perfect vision, but never truly see. Others lose their sight and discover that the most important things were invisible all along. He paused, those milky white eyes somehow still reaching into my soul. You came here thinking you needed to be forgiven, but forgiveness was always there, waiting. What you really needed was to learn how to accept it. Have you ever wondered why certain guilt feels so familiar, as if you've carried it before? Do you believe that some of our deepest wounds might actually be doorways to our greatest healing? I returned home a different person. Not because the accident didn't happen, not because the pain disappeared, but because I finally understood the difference between carrying guilt and carrying responsibility. I started volunteering with families affected by car accidents, became an advocate for mindful driving, and eventually founded a non-profit that provides meditation and support for people dealing with trauma from tragic mistakes. The little girl still visits my dreams sometimes, but now she comes as a guide, not a weight. The blind monk who saw through my soul taught me that true vision isn't about seeing clearly, it's about seeing compassionately, including toward ourselves. If this story touched something in your heart, leave a word in the comments, even just "Comd peace." Your words create ripples of healing that reach further than you know. And if you're carrying something heavy right now, something you think disqualifies you from peace or forgiveness, I want you to know, the very fact that you feel that weight means your heart is still alive, still capable of transformation. That's not your burden, that's your hope. Subscribe if you'd like to walk this path of awakening together. Share this if you know someone who needs to hear it. Let's build a space of compassion and truth together. The eyes that matter most can see in the dark, and they're already inside you, waiting to open.